House of EdTech, episode number 69.
Hi, this is Laura Fleming, Library Media Specialist at New Milford High School, and you're listening to House of EdTech podcast with Chris Nesi.
This episode of the House of EdTech is brought to you by summerpd.com. Sure, you're back at school and summer is over, but guess what? We don't stop learning. Check out summerpd.com and explore great content about things like Google Classroom, apps, formative assessments, and much more. You can get all 10 of the courses for $25 by using the promo code House of EdTech, all smushed together, no spaces, and sign up now to access the courses for your continued professional development on your schedule. Again, go to summerpd.com. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Christopher Nesi, and the House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. My objectives include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools and sharing tools and tips that you can hear about today and use tomorrow. I talk to teachers, leaders, and creators just like you and have them share their stories. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, House of EdTech time. Thank you for taking time to listen to the podcast. If you're new to the show, hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for checking it out. Real quick, our segments. For those that are new, we do the EdTech Thought, where I give a little rant, not a rant, but I talk about something related to education, technology. Sometimes they're together, sometimes they're apart. We have the EdTech Recommendation, where I'm going to recommend, and in this episode I'm going to give you 2 recommendations of some technology that you can try in your classroom today, tomorrow, next week, but maybe certainly not before you heard me say it. Or if you're already using it, that's really good too. And of course, we have the House of EdTech VIP, and that is somebody who I've identified that, is on Twitter, I'm connected to. And if you're not connected to this individual, you're going to want to get connected with them and pick their brain, ask them questions, and grow your professional learning network. And my featured guest this episode is Phys Ed teacher Justin Schleider. So I'm really excited to share a different and really unique and really passionate perspective on education and education technology with you in this episode. And again, if this is your first episode, please, go back, check out other episodes in the back catalog. Go to chrisnesi.com. Any episode number prior to this one, which is number 69, you can just go to chrisnesi.com/put in the number, and you will get the show notes and be able to listen to the episode on the website. Or by all means, go and download in your podcast catcher of choice. But before we get into the segments, I do a little bit of banter here at the top of the show, and I want to share with everybody a little bit of feedback that I've gotten recently on the podcast. And if you've never left feedback, hopefully this encourages you to share, because I like to share what you think of the show and what you're learning so other people know that there's value here. And I appreciate it. It gives me a lot of encouragement when I get the kind words from all of you. So first up, Kevin McElhinney. I hope I said that right. He is on Twitter at Kevin McElhinney, KevinMcElhinney, and he's a science teacher, and he is a fellow maker and woodworker, DIYer. He's a longtime listener who's also considering starting his own podcast, and he reached out to let me know that he enjoys the show, and that, again, he's a woodworker, and like I do, like my House of EdTech makerspace, here where I live with the office and all the different things that I do, that Kevin and I have this in common. So, Kevin, tweet some pictures out. What are you making? What are you working on? I mean, obviously with the new studio and the office being done, projects have slowed down a little bit here for me. So sometimes I start to get that itch to want to, create and make something. So we'll see what the next project holds for me. And Kevin was also kind enough to leave a really nice review on iTunes, where he said that Chris Nesi does a fantastic job informing us of different EdTech tools with practical examples we can use in our classroom. His interviews in 3 segments inspire and inform, all in the same podcast. Listening has led him to think... I'm sorry, I misread that. Listening to him has led me, and I'm speaking as Kevin, because that's what I'm doing here. Listening to him has led me to think I can start my own science teaching podcast in South Dakota. And yes, Kevin, you can do it. And if you need any help, advice, want to bounce anything off me, please, you know how to find me, and I'm more than happy to help you and talk to you about podcasting. And we have a new listener who, as I record this, again, episode 69, Dawn Rodriguez may take a while to catch up because at last check, as she goes through the marathon of listening, she just discovered the podcast recently, and at last check, she was up to episode 20. So Dawn will eventually catch up to this episode and hear me shouting her out. So Dawn Rodriguez is on Twitter. She is at DRODCME, and that's DRODCME on Twitter. And she's binge listening, and she also left a great iTunes review after just 20 episodes. And she said she found the House of EdTech when she did a Google search for, quote, best education podcasts, end quote. And she began listening the week before school started, and she wishes she started sooner. But hey, you're on the train. Welcome aboard. I'm great to have you here. She thinks the podcast is a gem. She enjoys the guests. And I just want to say to Dawn and also to Kevin, thank you for taking time to leave an iTunes review. That's really great. And it does help the podcast become more visible in iTunes, as I talk about at the end of every episode. So thank you to Kevin, and thank you to Dawn. And also make sure you connect with them. And also Dina Mattia. She's a New Jersey teacher. She is at Mattia Dina, MattiaDina. And she left some feedback on an earlier episode where my wife Caitlin first appeared, and that would be episode 14. And if you've never listened to that episode, go to chrisnesi.com/14, and Kate talks about her experiences as a high school librarian, photographer, mother, wife to me, and of course, she's been on the show since then in a couple of other episodes, but episode 14 is where she first appeared. And of course, if you have any EdTech questions that you want me to answer here on the podcast, feedback, or get me to talk about something, use the hashtag House of EdTech on Twitter. Shoot me a Vox. My username is Mr. Nesi. And you can also call 732-903-4869 and leave a voicemail, and I'll be happy to play that audio here on the podcast. Also, I want to give a nice shout out to my awesome supporters, Peggy George, Mark Grindell, Dan Gallagher, and Jeff Herb. Jeff Herb, of course, from the Instructional Tech Talk podcast. They are my awesome supporters. They are my patrons, and they are 4 people who are helping the show financially, for lack of better words. If you're interested in supporting the show in a different way, and of course, this show will always be free, but if you feel compelled to, throw $1 my way, $2, you can do that through Patreon, and you just need to go to chrisnesi.com/awesome, and you can find out how you can do that. So thank you to the patrons. Thank you to my feedback sender inners, and I just made up that term. But that's enough about me, and let me tell you some more about what I think, which is one of my classic phrases. But let's get over to the EdTech Thought. Earlier this summer, I gave you guys a challenge, and it was the summer challenge to learn something new. And as promised, I myself did learn to do something new. And of course, it was in my kitchen. And I just wanted to give you my wrap up of 2 things that I learned how to make before summer ended. The first thing is I learned how to make my own modeling chocolate. My second son, Colton, turned 1 year old on August 16th. And I like to bake, so I decided to do the cupcakes for the party. And I just had this design in my head of, cupcakes with a blue buttercream frosting, which I also made homemade, and having coming out of the blue frosting what looked like little crabs, because we call him the crab. He's Colton the crab. Not because he's crabby, just it starts with a C and it's cute. So why not nickname your child, of course? So I wanted to make these little crabs out of something edible and not just do more buttercream on top of the cupcake. So I learned how to make modeling chocolate. And I learned this from the awesome YouTube channel, My Cupcake Addiction. And I will link in the show notes for this episode the video that I learned how to make my own modeling chocolate from. And it was really easy. It was just, melting chocolates from the craft store, some corn syrup, and that was it. Just melt it, get it together, a little bit of water, I think. Double check the recipe that I linked to in the show notes. And I had modeling chocolate. And I will, of course, and I promise, because I don't want my pal Brent Warner from edtech.tv to get on my case that I didn't post a picture. So I will have a picture posted of the cupcakes in the show notes for this episode. And the second thing I learned how to make was a DIY Chick-Fil-A sandwich. Had some chicken breasts available to me at the start of the school year. Wanted to make something for dinner. Off the YouTube channel Nico's Kitchen. Great home YouTuber from Australia. I will, of course, link to the video in the show notes. I made my own Chick-fil-A sandwich. So there you go. I learned how to make modeling chocolate, do a Chick-fil-A sandwich. That's what I learned how to do. A couple of new recipes in my life. And here's a bonus life EdTech. This is just a tech recommendation. The Paprika app. That's what Caitlin and I use, and I believe we talked about it in the episode where we talked about how we do things financially and everything. But the Paprika app, available on iOS and the desktop. This is a paid app. Caitlin paid for it. She just got me on board with it. I believe it's $9.99, and it allows us to manage our recipes, our shopping list for groceries across the iPad, the iPod. I can access it on the web. I can access it on the Mac. And I'll have a link to that also in the show notes. But if you're looking for a way to manage that aspect of your life with meals and shopping and all your recipes, keyword searching, and check out Paprika, because it's just a really, really cool app. One of my favorite features on the iPad is when I can go to a recipe, copy the link, or just browse in the app, and it will pull the recipe from a website into the app and put the picture, the ingredients. I can then in the app change the portions, and it'll make all the adjustments to the measurements. So that's really cool. And again, that app is called Paprika. So that's what I learned this summer. If you still want to share what you learned this summer, or of course, anytime you learn something new and you're excited about it and you want to shout it from the rooftops, send it my way and we can include it here on the podcast, because it doesn't just have to be me all the time, everybody. Send me your audio. I want to hear from you. And I guess as we get into election season, yeah, I'm pointing at you like Uncle Sam. I want to hear from you. So yeah, send me something. And that's my EdTech thought. For this episode's EdTech recommendation, I want to talk to you about two things. And the first recommendation is called Adobe Spark. And Adobe Spark is a content creation tool from Adobe, and I'm here on the internet looking at a blog post titled 16 Ways to Motivate Students in the Classroom Using Adobe Spark. I'm not going to give you all 16 ways, but there is a great video here that has a fourth grade teacher talking about how she was using Adobe Spark at the end of the recent school year. So here is a 2-minute clip from this fourth grade teacher talking about Adobe Spark in her classroom.
My students this year are amazing. They love to learn. They are ready for anything. I am always looking for new ways for them to be able to demonstrate their knowledge, new things for them to use.
We are very creative.
I love Adobe Spark because it keeps my students completely engaged. It's also intuitive, so it's not difficult for them to jump right in. It is endless what I can do with this. We can do it for history. We can even do it for science experiments and investigations. We decided to make a Spark video about what makes fourth grade awesome.
In fourth grade, we did shell art, icons.
Probably the biggest reason they love it is because they can personalize it. There is a lot of choice involved. Every single person's is totally unique. The voice, the pictures, the icons, the text. They also can choose a variety of themes for their video. It really gives them a feel of they are truly making a movie. It's so much more than just a paper. It's an entire experience that people can watch.
We loved The Lion King, and in the play, I was a hyena.
I love the fact that they can use their voices, bringing life to what they actually have written.
And in the play, I was a hyena.
It makes it so personal to them. They can use it at home, they can work on it no matter where they are. They can share with their family and their grandparents and their classmates. It's really nice to be able to give them a glimpse into what their children are doing during the day, what they're learning. I think what I love most about my job is when they know that they have learned something and that they own it, and they're like, oh, I got it. It's me. I'm always trying to make learning fun and exciting and engaging. And when I'm using Adobe Spark, it's fun to learn it, it's fun to share what we've learned. It's fun.
So clearly this is a good thing, because who does not want to have fun in their classrooms? So just a couple of the ways in this blog post, and this is from the blog on spark.adobe.com, and this blog post was written by Amy Copperman. And just a couple of things here from this list of 16. You can use Adobe Spark for sight word proficiency. You can create a rhyming games. You can just simply play with shapes and colors. It's also great for the ESL student for doing some second language acquisition activities. Great for story starters. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there are way more than what I shared, because this is a list of 16. And of course, let your creativity run wild and see what you and your students can create with Adobe Spark. And again, the website is Spark, SPARK, .adobe.com. And that is my first EdTech recommendation for this episode. The second one, and I've had this in the queue for a while, and this is called GDoc Publisher. What this add-on does for Google Docs is it allows you to keep your formatting when you publish your document to the web, because Google Docs works really well for writing and creating documents. However, when you try to publish it, the formatting can get kind of wonky, for lack of a better technical term. Google Doc Publisher fixes this problem. Of course, it's not an official Google product. It's an open source tool that fixes any wonky formatting when you publish your Google Doc. And I will link to the Google Doc Publisher in the show notes for this episode. And these two are the EdTech recommendations: Adobe Spark and GDoc Publisher. And now for this episode's featured content, I'm going to share with you a conversation that I had recently with Justin Schleider. And normally I would tell you to sit down, but because he's a Phys Ed teacher, if you have the opportunity to get up and move, take a walk, hit the treadmill, go for a jog, enjoy his energy. And I'm not going to delay this. Let's get right into this great conversation about education, technology, and a whole lot more with Justin Schleider. And joining us now here on the podcast, Mr. Justin Schleider. He is a physical education and health teacher from Springfield Elementary School right here in New Jersey. He's a proud graduate of Rowan University, where he has a degree in health and exercise science. He also has his master's in physical education as well as educational leadership from Emporia State University. He enjoys attending conferences and presenting about his passions in education, and I can vouch for him as a presenter because I've been in a number of his sessions, and Justin is a great presenter. He's very engaging, as you will hear very shortly. He's also a rabid endorser of Voxer and the founder of the hashtag SlowChatPE. Justin has 3 children who are awesome little people, and if you meet him and he looks tired, well, now you know why. So, Justin, 20 episodes in the making. Welcome to the House of EdTech.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for having me on, Mr. Nessie. What an honor. What an honor to be interviewed by you, sir. This is exciting when you think about who's been on your show, and then you have me. So this might be one of your letdown episodes when you look at your analytics later.
Hey, this is not going to be a letdown because, 1, I haven't had a physical education teacher on. 2, I haven't had a phys ed teacher on who knows tech. When I made the decision to get that person, you invited yourself on the show 20 episodes ago.
Yes, I did. Absolutely. I said, wait till 69 and then we'll do it. That number always makes me laugh.
That was
so,
a fun,
yes.
I was going to say that was a fun day at Ed Camp, New Jersey. I'm sitting there with LaVonna Roth and you're like, hey, I want to be on your show. And I was like, heck yeah, I want to bring you on the show. And then you reserved this episode. So here we are.
Absolutely. LaVonna is a wonderful lady. She ignites my shine all the time. I'm sure as thousands of other people out there. I saw her present live. I've been lucky enough. She is fantastic. Big fan of LaVonna. And yeah, this has been quite a while. I'm very excited. I really enjoy your podcast, and the fact that I'm on here now is pretty exciting for me, sir.
All right. Enough of your nose turning brown. Let's dive in. So, let's start at the beginning for you because, you know, I'm certified social studies and all that good stuff, as everybody knows. How'd you get into education, and then specifically, why physical education?
Sure. So let's start back at the beginning. I am one of those boring teacher stories that will tell you I've wanted to be a teacher ever since I can remember. I'll give you the whole, my mom's a teacher, my dad's a teacher, my aunt's a teacher, my grandfather's a teacher, my brother's a teacher. Come from a long line of teachers, and for me, there was really nothing else I wanted to do in life. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I remember being, 11 years old, going to a bar mitzvah, and they have those little license plates you can make over there. This was a fancy one in Long Island of my cousin, and my license plate said teacher. So literally as far back as I can remember, that's what I wanted to do. And then growing up, I loved sports. Absolutely loved sports. Didn't matter what it was. All day I'd get butterflies in my stomach waiting for whatever competition was coming around that season. So it was phenomenal. And then as I got older, I just figured, hey, let's put physical activity and education together. And at the time, I thought I would be teaching sports, and we can get more into that a little later when we talk about what is a physical education teacher in 2016. But I really wanted to do something where I was around kids, but I was not sitting down at a desk all day. And voila, physical education, here I came.
It's a phenomenal story.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, some people will tell you, I guess you get the two different stories. I never wanted to teach. I did everything else, and then something drew me to the classroom. Or you get my story where, I was born a teacher, nothing else in life. To be honest, I don't know that I don't have any other skills. I can only work with kids. That's it. That's all I got. A lot of times I feel like a little embarrassed because some of my friends have these manly, skills like, oh, I can build this and I can do this and I can fix this. And I really can't do much of anything but engage children in a variety of activities.
Now, I'm in a similar boat because I am also someone who knew from a very early age that he wanted to teach. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. It's all I've ever pursued. I've done other things, but ultimately this is the path that I got on, and it's the path that I refuse to get off of. So I'm with you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I no idea what else I could do in the world. So hopefully I'll stick to education and keep getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you never leave the profession. And if you do, it'd be a damn shame. The reason I have you here is because I remember it was a specific session. I don't remember the conference, but I found you very engaging. And I just knew that, again, as you had just mentioned, you engage kids. But I also know that you are passionate about technology. I guess what I'm getting at is, what are some of the ways that you are integrating technology into physical education?
up until about 3 years ago, I wasn't doing much with tech. I felt like I was a very good physical education teacher, and the kids were learning, and I was, teaching the standards. Everything was going well. And then my superintendent at the time, Edith Conroy, came out and said she was at a school, and she was describing what we now know as a mystery Skype. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I went to Education Skype, which is probably the most underused website in the world when it comes to resources for technology for teachers, and a place where all of us should go to connect. I don't hear many people talking about it. But I went to Education Skype, and I saw this gentleman named Nick Gordon from the country of Wales, and he was a physical education and health teacher. So I looked at his stuff, and he wanted to do a mystery Skype. So I ended up, as a Phys Ed teacher, doing a mystery Skype. And it was my first foray really outside of the Phys Ed and health realm, trying to do some other stuff. So, with the mystery Skype, you're trying to find out what continent, what hemisphere, all that kind of different stuff, using yes or no questions to narrow it down. And I was teaching, geography, social studies, pairing up with the 6th grade teacher. And then from there, it just took off. I said, wow, that was really cool. I mean, we were with Wales, and then from when we did our Skype, our mystery Skype, by the way, they won. Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon, for that. Then he made an iMovie of what we did. So I had never made an iMovie. So I looked at this guy, and at the time I was like, wow, this is amazing. This video looks like a Hollywood production. Now, I knew nothing about iMovie. I didn't realize that a lot of it's the template that goes into it. But, at the time, this naive Phys Ed and health teacher goes, wow. So then I made one to show what we had done. So we had these two kind of dueling iMovies. And then he mentions to me one day, are you on Twitter? I'm like, I give the common answer. I really don't care what you're doing on a Saturday afternoon. Like, you went to the grocery store. Well, wonderful. We all go to the grocery store. You had this hamburger with, potato chips on top. Wow, that's mind-blowing. But he goes, no, it's for education. It's great professional development. So I have to give him a lot of credit. He got me started. And then from there, once you get on Twitter, the technology faucet just opens up, and, there's so much that you can do from there. So that's my story about how I got into tech. And now I will answer the original question of what do I use tech for in class. So once I got on Twitter, I started connecting with other Phys Ed teachers, and this is when Voxer was just starting to become very popular. Or actually not even popular, but it was just starting to occur. And you saw some of the leaders on Twitter talking about Voxer, and then I hopped on Voxer and started creating physical education chats. So it was me, this dude William Bodie, Jenny Walmsley, really started Phys Ed Voxer, which now is blown up, and there's a Voxer group for everything in physical education, and a lot in health as well. So there's a guy named Spencer Barfus who started VoxerPE.com, and you can go there and you can see, when you think about technology and physical education, any group you could think of. Google Apps for Education, Google Sites, drones. It goes on and on and on. There's, 75 different technology chats and different stuff that's open on Voxer. So we get on Voxer, and I start teaming up with these different people. And now the conversation goes from Twitter, 140 characters, to I could hear these voice messages and them telling me exactly what they're doing in class. So I teamed up with a guy named Adam Laveau, who goes under Mr. Adam PE on Twitter. And he actually remotely taught my class. So from there, I got to see Padlet, as I got to see him use Padlet, which I'm sure most of your listeners now, this is an old hat to them. But to me at the time, the guy is in Saudi Arabia. He's teaching my class via Skype, and he has them going on a Padlet. So that's how I first learned about Padlet. So now in my class, that's one of my main exit tickets. I use Padlet. And one of the tricks that I use for Padlet, where it asks for a title, you could actually put a question as the title. So that way my students know. And then we have Chromebooks for 3rd grade and up, we're one-to-one. So they bring their Chromebooks to the gym, and I'll put out the link through Google Classroom because we're a Google Apps for Education school, and I will use Padlet as one of my exit tickets, which I absolutely love. I mean, Padlet is fantastic for just quick formative assessments. So that's one of the ways I use it. And then I use Google Classroom for much of what everyone else does, pushing out links and creating some quick assignments there. But one of the cooler things in Phys Ed is an app called BAM Video Delay. Now, BAM Video Delay is exactly what it sounds like. You videotape the student doing whatever activity, physical activity, and you could set the delay on how long until the video is put to your laptop, which is hooked up to a projector, and they can actually see their own form and they can critique themselves. So I think BAM Video Delays are a really, really cool idea for physical education teachers out there. So we use Padlet, we use BAM Video Delay for some video analysis. There's a ton of different apps out there for that. I really, really enjoy them. And then the number one tech tool that I could say for any teacher, I don't care what you're teaching, physical education, health, any special, general education, is Seesaw. Now, I just became a Seesaw ambassador a couple weeks ago, which means nothing. They don't pay me. I might be getting a t-shirt at some point in time or something like that. I don't know. But Seesaw is a digital portfolio. Are you familiar with Seesaw?
I am, and I believe you were one of the first people who I heard about it from.
Yeah, and Seesaw, I guess I should step back and say, I really like free things, things that don't cost money. So I'm a huge Google fan. I mean, it costs the school district nothing. For teachers, for students, for everybody, it costs zero. So I really like that. I really like tech companies that offer freemiums. So Seesaw, you can put videos in there up to 5 minutes. You can push out links. They could do pictures. They could draw on pictures. It's so versatile that I've literally spent an hour at different conventions just showing how I use Seesaw. The parents go and say, wow, this is what my child's doing in class. This is different than when I went to school. Because Phys Ed has really transformed itself and rebranded itself and come out as really, in my opinion, and based with tons of facts, as the most important subject in school. And I know a lot of people think of it as a fluff subject or something that's, we need the kids to move around and everything. And then if they don't, they're a little antsy in my class. It's much, much more than that. I mean, we found that actual movement at a high level creates new brain cells and makes us smarter. I mean, there's science out there that's shown us this. And for me, that's why physical education is so important. And Seesaw really opens it up to everybody, where I could say, hey, look at what we're doing. Here's videos of what they're doing in class. Here's videos showing the standard and how they're mastering the standard or how they're working towards mastery of the standard. Here's a selfie of them explaining whatever concept it is that I'm asking them about. I really, really enjoy Seesaw. One of the coolest ways I've used it is a parent and I have a great relationship. And I was telling her, listen, your son's struggling with behavior. And she goes, all right, what can we do? I said, listen, how about this? At the end of the class, I'll interview him on Seesaw and I'll send it to you. And Seesaw sends either an email or a notification on the app if you download the app to the parent. So she gets it right at the end of the class. I'll have the class walk out, and at the side, I'll interview her son. How did you do today? Were there any problems? Did you have to do anything based on behaviors? And then on top of that, I'll ask, what did you learn today? So now there's a positive on top of that as well. So I'm a huge, huge fan of Seesaw. I mean, a digital portfolio is, for me, one of the most important things a specials teacher can do, but in general, and any teacher can do, just to show the parents what's going on in the classroom.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be able to track and record, and when you talk about some of the other ways that you're capturing what kids are doing, again, that's why I wanted to have you on, because everything you do is applicable across all subject areas. And the fact that you're able to do it in the physical education setting, speaks volumes.
Yeah, and to be honest, the more research I do and the more I'm looking into how to become a better teacher, the more physical education and health stands out as one of the great ways to reach our students. I mean, we're ahead of the curve in so many ways. I mean, you look at gamification. What is gamification? Leveling up. Right there. We do that in Phys Ed. We've been doing it for years. You want to talk about game-based learning? What have we been doing in Phys Ed for years? Learning through games. I mean, there's just so many. You want to talk about the whole child, social, emotional learning, which now they're trying to figure out how to do in the classroom. Phys Ed has all the tools to teach everything, and not many subjects are able to do that. But I mean, if we just roll out a ball, that's really doing the students a disservice, especially now when we're trying to look at physical literacy. What are they going to do outside of my classroom? What are they going to do when they get older? So we know, all right, well, if you love football, you're not going to be playing tackle football. Most of you, after you're 18, a small percentage will go to college and play, and probably 0% or 0.0001% will actually make it to the league and play. So what are you doing after that? What are you doing to stay active after? But technology is playing a huge role. I mean, in everything across education. So why should it be any different in physical education?
Exactly. And prior to speaking with you, before meeting you and getting to know you, that would have been one of the subject areas I would say that might be the toughest. But everything you've said so far makes integrating technology and physical education seem really easy, and it's not all that difficult now.
It's not. And the trick is not to dive into tech so deep that you're losing movement time. And that's that balance, that careful balance we have to walk, is saying, hey, we don't want to spend, for me, I don't want to spend more than 3 to 5 minutes of class using tech for the most part. So how can I streamline it and get it quickly done where it's incorporated, it's furthering the instruction or documenting it for me and whatever I need it for, or for their parents or for themselves, or how's it making my life easier, or how's it increasing learning? So when we look at tech, just like a classroom, and you look at your SAM or your TPAC, your, Trudicot, whatever method you want to look at for tech, are we just using it to say, hey, I'm a Phys Ed teacher that uses tech? Or are we using it to say, hey, tech is furthering my instruction. I'm becoming a better educator by using it. So hopefully I fall into the latter category.
Now, Justin, let's put on a different hat for a second, because you've shared a lot of perspective on you as the teacher and what you're doing and how you're doing what you do. Another thing that I like to learn from my guests is what they use in terms of tools or technology that help them be better professionals. So what are some of your can't live without apps or technologies?
All right, well, you set me up, so I'll knock it down. You talked about it in the intro. I connect with all these different people through Voxer, and that's where my real conversations come from. Twitter, to be honest, I've had a lot of social justice conversations that have gone south very, very quickly. Because in the beginning, I didn't know the language. I didn't quite realize and wasn't able to look outside myself as much. And Twitter is just not a great place for me personally to have a conversation. When you write things through text, you lose tone inflection. You lose a little perspective of where the person's coming from. When you hear voice, now suddenly there's a person on the other end. You have a little more empathy. You can hear if they're not yelling at you and they're talking in a civil tone, well, the conversation didn't escalate. It's still a conversation. So for me, I really like Voxer for those conversations. Plus, whoever's in your Voxer group, that's all who's going to listen to that at that time. There's always the possibility that somebody would send your messages out, which is fine. You have your different groups with different levels of trust. for the most part, I wouldn't care if anyone sends my messages out, but I really love the fact that I can have a back and forth conversation with multiple people. There's no character restrictions, and I could really get in depth and at the same time still retain that humanity and that empathy with the person on the other end of the conversation, which I think is one of Twitter's downfalls when you're having serious, hot button discussions or debates, is that you lose the humanity very, very quickly, and you read into the type that might not be there. And Voxer is fantastic for, keeping that voice alive, and you can hear and go, okay, all right, this person's having a regular conversation with me. I can really understand where they're coming from, or, ask those follow-ups. There's a lot less restrictions.
To be fair, I don't think there are truly a lot of in-depth hot-button issue conversations taking place on Twitter in education. I think that's one of the downfalls of Twitter, and where something like Voxer or being able to hop on a Google Hangout with somebody and see them and hear them, really can take one's personal and professional development, to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, think about it. If you're on Twitter, anyone in the world can see what you're typing. People are jumping in who weren't there at the beginning of the conversation. You might be having a conversation with someone who you have a relationship with. So you kind of already had this mutual trust and respect. You've already had other conversations around. Now you're getting somebody you have no idea who they are commenting on what you're typing when either they took it out of context, or it wasn't the way you meant it, or they weren't following the whole conversation, so they only saw one bit but missed what you said before. It's very, very tough, and I really like Voxer for that. And SatChat Voxer does a question a day, which I really enjoy. I'm one of the co-moderators of that, along with Sarah Thomas, Sarah, the teacher. And then I do a question a day on Slow Chat PE on Voxer as well. And again, I really just love the voice format. You leave a message, very simple, very easy. If you're not around, you don't worry about it. You just go, okay, Mark, all heard, and then you go from there. And then, like yourself, I've used Voxer a lot to communicate for projects. Probably my number one tool on how I can have voice communications for different ways that we're working on things. And the fact that I can connect with somebody in Saudi Arabia and Pennsylvania, because I work with Adam Laveau and Nicholas Enlick a lot, and that's where they're located, although Adam moved back to England. But we use Voxer a lot to do different projects. And Andy Milne's out in Chicago. He does a lot with us. The fact that I can hit a button and it goes out to all of them at one time. It's free. It's instantaneous. I get a message back as soon as they listen or they can talk. It's fantastic. I'm a huge, huge, huge Voxer fan.
Yeah, I mean, and for people who want to get on there, you don't need to jump into one of these large groups that have hundreds of people in them. Connect with one person, make it a walkie-talkie. Connect with a couple of people. I mean, that's how we use it, in the Ed Justice League. I mean, if not for Voxer, I don't know if the six of us would have as strong a relationship professionally and personally as we do, and you're going to get out of it what you put into it, as with all things.
Yeah, and you have to tailor Voxer to your needs, and that's what I'd say about social media in general. What works for me might not work for you. So some people say, well, Voxer is really overwhelming because there's all these different messages. I don't know. So some people who are a little more, I'll say, organized rather than anal, will write if there's a subject change or who they're talking to, they'll type that out in text, and then they'll do the message afterwards, which really helps organize things for there. So again, you just have to figure out how to use it for what you want. And if it doesn't work, go to the next thing. There's billions of different ways to use things. You have your Facebook, you have your LinkedIn, you have your Voxer, your Twitter. I'm sure now you just told me about Fire Talk, which I'm really excited about, learning what that's about. Just use it the way you want to. But for me personally, I'm a big fan of Voxer.
Awesome. Now, you touched on Slow Chat PE, but the other thing that I want you to basically promote and talk about, because you're always tweeting about it and talking about it, is the Google Drive for PE teachers. So what is it, and how can other PE teachers get access to it?
All right. So the first thing is, The Google Drive is a shared Google Drive. Now, it was started by a lady named Jen Peterson, who had a brilliant idea. Let's create a Google Drive, and we'll let everybody and anybody add to it from the Phys Ed and health community. It's going to be a shared resource. It was a good idea. The execution was a little flawed. So I stepped in a little bit and said, all right, we reached our maximum capacity is what happened of how many people had editing rights to this folder. And I think the number is 500. I forget what it is. Whatever the maximum capacity, we couldn't add anyone else to the folder. So what we did was we started, and she had created it in her Google Drive. So we created a separate Google Drive just for Phys Ed and health teachers. It's called Resources for Phys Ed, I believe, and I put the link out every day on there. Yep, Resources for Phys Ed, the number 4. And we changed it to view only, which allowed us to have anyone have access to it. To view it, you could download stuff, and then you could, make a copy and change it for what you want. So, and then we've given, I don't know, I'd say up to date about 60 people editing rights to it. And these are our creators, our producers. Phys Ed is actually a little different than the rest of education when it comes to our producers. And I'm going to tell you why. And this is my personal opinion. I don't speak for every Phys Ed teacher everywhere, but I think because a lot of Phys Ed teachers played team sports growing up, we understand that we're better together and we want to be a part of something bigger than us. And we know that if we all work together, we're stronger. So they freely give up their time and their resources and put them into this Google Drive, where a lot of times you see these same sort of producers outside of Phys Ed using Teachers Pay Teachers. I'm not here to rail on Teachers Pay Teachers. What I will say is if you're creating a lesson and selling lessons on Teachers Pay Teachers, that's wrong. And the reason why is, A, if it's in your content area, they don't belong to you. They belong to your district, so you shouldn't be selling them. And B, if you're already creating those lessons, then why wouldn't you uplift education as a whole and say, hey, if I'm reaching 200 kids, if I put my lessons out there for free, I might be reaching 5,000 kids. So for me, I'm all about creating something that's better for our profession. Now, if you're writing books or you're putting hours into these different, technology, whatever it is, ideas and units that are resources, I can get that you want to sell them. That's fine. I got no problem, no issues. But lesson plans, I have a bit of a problem there. But Phys Ed teachers, they're pretty much 99% of them willing to share anything they make for free as long as they get credit for it. Saying, oh, I got this from this person. So we created the Google Drive. Our 60 or 70 greatest producers have added to it, and I get a couple requests a month to have editing rights only because they want to add to it, which is really cool. And they know they get nothing from it. There's no money. Nobody's making anything. Nobody's really getting notoriety. I mean, if somebody sees something you're doing in there, they might shout you out on Twitter or whatever. But they're really doing it because they are feeling that, hey, I'm bettering education as a whole and specifically physical education. So we have a really cool shared Phys Ed drive, which I think is fantastic. Another project that I'm really proud of is there was about 10 teachers from across the world, most of us in America, but, from around the world, that created something called a National Lesson Plan Creator. What it is it took every grade level outcome from our national Phys Ed organization called Shape America, and they put it in a spreadsheet. Then we took it from the spreadsheet and we put it into, a 40-page Google form, and we hooked AutoCAD up to it. So now you can just click whatever grade level outcomes that you're going to teach for that lesson. We have, different sections for anticipatory set or intro or, whatever you want, assessment, all these different things. And when you're done, after you get done making this lesson plan, which might take you 5 minutes, it's automatically emailed to you as an editable Google Doc, which is really cool. It's free. It was a collaborative effort. And again, I'm really proud of that for Phys Ed teachers across the nation and the country and the world, because it just shows how much they want to give back, and they're really out there for the proper reasons, in my opinion.
This is the first I'm hearing of that. I knew of basically everything else that you have shared. So, I mean, that's just like another notch on your belt in terms of what you are. You just don't talk about changing education or uplifting the profession. You're doing it. Hands down, without a doubt. You're doing it. So, I mean, thank you.
And again, I'm just a small piece. And it's funny because when you get connected, I talked about my ego before, as an elementary phys ed teacher, you get to say to the teacher, I know this person or that person, go connect with them. Oh, you want to learn about Makerspace? Oh, here's Meredith. Here's this person. Here's that person. Oh, you're trying to get into administration or you have some questions? Here's Doug Tim or Ross LeBrun. Or, whatever it is. I've been on social media enough that now I kind of can help other people focus on where to go to. So I always tell everyone the same. I'm not great, but what I do understand is who is great. And then I try to steal a little bit of what they're doing to make myself better. And that's what the people listening, hopefully that's what you do. You go, okay, I can use him as a resource because he can direct me to go there, to go to the other place. And I think you're the same way, especially with your podcast, where people could reach out to you and say, hey, where do I go for this? I want to learn more. Who's the expert? Who's doing leading, innovative things with this? And then we point them in the right direction.
Well, based on what you just said, you are now on this list of people who are in the right direction that I can point people to. So,
yeah, absolutely. When it comes to phys ed and health, I have people all the time. Hey, talk to this guy. He seems to know what he's doing. And in the elementary world, I have a pretty decent understanding of what I'm doing. When it comes to middle and high school, I kind of just say, hey, go to this person, go to the other person. They know much more than I do.
Well, Justin, thank you for your time. And hey, you are also on the list of, I know I can call you and get you back on the show anytime I need you.
Anytime, sir. Anytime. And I will constantly try to push myself to learn what's new and what can better my students out there and my teaching. So I appreciate you having me on, sir. Big fan. As you know, I try to push out your stuff to people. And when we talk about education and technology podcasts, I mean, it doesn't get much better than House of Edtech.
And I don't know about you, but my head is still spinning from everything that Justin shared in that conversation. So every link, every service, every website, complete and thorough show notes over on chrisnessy.com/69. And of course, I included the video that we talked about in the conversation about the people stealing the bike. And that video clip originally appeared as part of ABC's What Would You Do? So again, chrisnessy.com/69, and you'll get to every person that he mentioned, Sarah the teacher, Edith Conroy, Nick Gordon, amongst others. And also the all-important link to the Google Drive for PE, which has amazing resources for physical education teachers of all levels. So if you know a phys ed teacher, definitely send them to this episode so they get to know Justin and they can see everything that Justin shared in the conversation. So awesome. And Justin is a good friend of the show. And I thank you, Justin, for your friendship. And I'm glad I know you as a professional. So thank you so much. And now it's time for the House of Ed Tech VIP. And this episode's House of Ed Tech VIP is Mr. Brian Briggs. Brian is the Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology for the Plumas Lake Elementary School District, which is in the Sacramento, California area. Brian is responsible for the implementation of 3 aspects of technology and instruction, including technology being used as a tool for learning by students, teachers planning and implementing instructional techniques using technology to engage students in learning, and the infrastructure needed to support the use of technology in the district. He leads and supports his district in integrating 21st century skills, the Common Core standards, and of course, the everyday learning of students. Brian is also the co-host of the podcast called Check This Out with Ryan and Brian. And of course, the Ryan in the show is Ryan O'Donnell, who you can connect with at Creative Edtech on Twitter. And that podcast is all about cool tools and apps and education. It's a really great show. I enjoy it. And you can also connect with their show on Twitter. The handle is Check This Out, B as in boy, R. Connect with the show on Twitter. Check out their podcast website, which is checkthisout.weebly.com. And of course, Brian's the VIP, so you need to connect with Mr. Briggs, and he is on Twitter at Bri Briggs, BRIGGS. And congratulations, Brian Briggs, you are a House of Ed Tech VIP. Hey, we did it. The school year has started. First episode of the House of Ed Tech here in the 2016-2017 school year. Thank you again for making me a part of your professional development. Whether you're mowing the grass, raking leaves. I don't know when you're listening to this, so hope you enjoyed the show. And I'm pretty sure that you did. Thank you again to Justin Schleider for taking time to be the guest on the show today. Thank you to summerpd.com for supporting this episode. Again, make sure you go to summerpd.com and use the promo code House of Ed Tech all together, and you can save yourself some money on some great PD courses. And it doesn't matter if it's summer or not. You like to learn. Keep the conversation going and visit my website, chrisnessy.com/70/70. What am I doing? I'm getting ahead of myself. /69. And that's going to give you the show notes for this episode, number 69. I would love to connect with you and hear your feedback on everything that Justin and I talked about, the resources we shared, the House of EdTech recommendation, Adobe Spark. Want to hear from you? Send in your feedback. Voxer, Twitter. Go to the website, click share feedback. Use the hashtag House of EdTech on Twitter. Let's do it. Connect with me. Time to connect, people. Let's do it. I want to hear from you. Again, Uncle Sam, I'm pointing at you guys. If you enjoy the podcast, and if you get this far, of course you do. So I'd like you to do a couple things. First, tell somebody else about the show. I'm very appreciative to everybody who says that they tell me that they told somebody else about the podcast, and I connect with them on Twitter. And word of mouth is the best way to share this podcast, as well as really any podcast you listen to. If you think somebody else is going to like a show you like, tell somebody else who might like it. That's going to be great for everybody. Number 2, please rate and review the podcast in iTunes. I'm very grateful for what Kevin and Dawn did. They submitted some iTunes reviews, and that positive feedback that gives me the energy, in addition to what I already have, to want to make a great show for you to enjoy and learn from. So thank you again, and keep those reviews coming in. I'd like to put a challenge out here. I'm going to sneak this in at the end. If you are an international listener, and I know I have some people in Europe and Africa and even Australia, get those iTunes reviews, and I want to get somebody international to share their thoughts. On the next episode, number 70, I'm going to be speaking to Katie Ann Wilson, the techie chick, and we're going to be talking about virtual reality in education. And that episode will release on September 25th, 2016. Until next time, thanks for joining me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. House of Ed Tech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.